Hey everyone, and thank you for checking out this message today. I'm Reed Robinette. I'm the senior pastor at Crossroads Church in Maryland, and we hope this message encourages you and challenges you. We believe that everybody has a next step of faith to take, and I hope this message helps you take yours. Enjoy.
Good morning. My name is Tito. I'm part of the mission team here at the church, and we're excited that this is Missions Month, so we get to share every service a little bit of everything that we're doing and everything that's going on. And so basically, one of the things that I would like to recommend to you is a book that was written by James Belt, and it's called Hope Realized. And this book is a great book. I read it several weeks ago and was able to be a part of a book panel in discussing the book and how effective it is to understand, especially the philosophy and how Crossroads does missions, and also James's journey in giving his life over for several years in Nicaragua and what happens there, and also the ministry of Nica Works started by Tim and Katie Adams, and it's just a tremendous book, Hope Realized, and it really describes Crossroads and Crossroads missions really to a T. So I would recommend that to you. The other thing that I want to do is I just want to share about some of the affiliate ministries here. Some of you are fully aware, but we're just emphasizing getting opportunity to continue sharing. One of the places that we have is the Community Center, a tremendous outreach opportunity run by Mike and Karen Strine. They deal with children. They have kids programs there. They have a feeding program there, SO classes there. They do soccer on Tuesdays with the kids. They have an outreach with that, and also prayer for families, a tremendous ministry that's there. Also, Justin's Place, I direct Justin's Place along with Walter. And we just excited on August the 22nd, this coming Saturday, we have a graduation. All of you are invited to come and share that. Also, we have the counseling center here at the church, and of course, Nica Works in Nicaragua. We also partner with so many different people that do so many different things in this community, and for us, it's a pleasure to be working with them, such as ministries like NESAP in Hampstead, New Life for Girls in Westminster, Transformation Center in Baltimore, and just so many different other places that we connect with just to make sure that we're to be a force in our community, because we are indeed for the community. And we want to be able to share not so much the things that people think people are against, but the things that we're actually for and the things that we're doing. If you want to know more about how to get involved in any of these things, Stephanie Albright really is the one who does a great job in connecting you to getting involved in any avenue or any way that you want to, whether the affiliates or even with the partner organizations. I want to highlight that Reed is going to be leading a team to Africa October 26th, and he's going to be doing some fantastic things there. And I think one of his services is going to be coming live, and we're going to be able to participate in that. And also in January, pray for a trip that is being led by some of our team leaders here that's going to be going to Nicaragua January 25th to, I think, February 1st or 2nd. So you can pray for those teams as they get. It's been almost 2.5 years since we've done any international trips, and we're excited. We used to do almost 3 a year in so many different places, Nicaragua, Africa, and in Guatemala. And we're so glad that things are opening up again, that we're able to travel and support our partners abroad. So with that, I just want to let you know that you are an important part of everything that happens in this place. And we're constantly just going to continue to thank you and hope that you would desire to get involved. Well, this week we want to talk about, in the series, we talked about for you, God is for you. Then we talked about the for neighbor, right, about loving the neighbors. And Reed did a great job in what all that entails. And today we're going to talk about the least of these. And what I want to do is basically, I'm going to be reading 2 portions, scripture in Isaiah 58, Matthew 25. I'm going to let the scripture really speak for itself. I'm going to have some comments I'm going to share, and hopefully we can get a real good view from the Bible on what God is speaking to us about what the least of these is all about. So, in the book of Isaiah, chapter 58, God reveals his chosen fast. And we're not going to be talking about fasting, but in Isaiah 58, that's what he is discussing in this chapter. And the reason that he's doing that is because the people were fasting, but they were not fasting in a way that really was bringing glory to God or glorifying God at all. They were really fasting, and they were fasting unto themselves with a self-righteousness, and so they just had this presumption that it was about them and that it wasn't about the Lord at all. And so they got and kind of ruined what God wanted to do with that. And so Isaiah 58 is God calling Isaiah and prompting Isaiah, listen, this is a message I want you to give to the people concerning the fast. And in that, as he's disclosing about the fast, he says what the true fast is, and then he unfolds for us some things that we are going to highlight. And so I want to read that to you, Isaiah 58, verses 1 through 14. It says, shout it out loud, do not hold back. Raise your voice like a trumpet. Declare to my people their rebellion, and to the descendants of Jacob their sins. For day after day they seek me out. They seem eager to know my ways, as if they were a nation that does what is right and has not forsaken the commands of its God. They ask me for just decisions, and some eager for God to come near them. Why have we fasted, they say, and you have not seen it? Why have we humbled ourselves, and you have noticed? Yet on the day of your fasting, you do as you please and exploit all your workers. Your fasting ends in quarreling and strife, and in striking each other with wicked fists. You cannot fast as you do today and expect your voice to be heard on high. Is this kind of fast I have chosen only a day for people to humble themselves? Is it only for bowing one's head like a reed and for lying in sackcloth and ashes? Is that what you call a fast, a day acceptable to the Lord? Is not this the kind of fasting I have chosen, to loose the chains of injustice and to untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and break every yoke? Is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter, when you see the naked to clothe them, and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood? Then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you, and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. Then you will call, and the Lord will answer, and you will cry for help, and he will say, here I am. If you do away with the yoke of oppression, with the pointing of fingers and malicious talk, and if you spend yourselves in behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will rise in the darkness, and your night will become like the noonday. The Lord will guide you always. He will satisfy your needs in a sun-scorched land and will strengthen your frame. You will be like a well-watered garden, like a spring whose waters never fail. Your people will rebuild the ancient ruins and will raise up age-old foundations. You will be called a repairer of broken walls. What a beautiful thing. You'll be called a repairer of broken walls. I like this too. Restorer of streets with dwellings. If you keep your feet from breaking the Sabbath and from doing as you please on my holy day, if you call the Sabbath a delight and the Lord's holy day honorable, and if you honor it by not going your own way and not doing as you please or speaking idle words, then you will find your joy in the Lord, and I will cause you to ride in triumph on the heights of the land and to feast on the inheritance of your father Jacob. The mouth of the Lord has spoken. What a mouthful. Whew. We are not going to break that down. It's a lot, right? There's so much in there, and there's so much good in there, and there's so many little key phrases that say such wonderful things that really are just awe-inspiring. Us being a well-watered garden and being in his presence, what a wonderful thing, a repairer of broken walls, right? And the restoration of dwellings. Man, those are all beautiful things that he says and he's speaking. And one of the things that he's really sharing with them, right, is if we think of Isaiah to look at it in this way, right, he's really speaking about what the problem is, right, concerning fasting, and then he gives a solution to it. So basically, that's how it breaks down in Isaiah. In a nutshell, he says, hey, this is the problem, this is the solution, and we're going to focus more on the solution side of it, where we're going to find the mention of the least of these, and then we're going to contrast that and come to the New Testament and then really focus on what it is. What is the least of these, right? So we can have a clear understanding of what God is saying. So here in Isaiah, he's really begins in this verse 1, right? I like when he says, lift your voice like a trumpet. In other words, when you hear that, he's trying to really tell Isaiah, hey, listen, man, I want you to, when you say this thing, I want you to say it. I want you to say it loud. I want you to say it so they can hear it, right? That trumpet, when we think of trumpets in the Old Testament, we think of a shofar. A shofar was a call to war. When it was blown, it was also a call to worship. Also, it was a call for instruction. So when he says, man, we want you to blow the trumpet, blow that shofar, is in other words, he was trying to say, listen, I want you to bring this to the attention of the people that they're doing this wrong and they need to do it right. Right? Because they think that they're accomplishing something and they're not. And there's strife and there's this and that and the pointing of fingers and all this stuff. And there's a lot of stuff that's not right. And they think they're doing it right, but they're not. So I want you to just go. I want you to be forceful in what I want you to tell them. And I want you to tell them because I love them and I want them to be a well-watered garden and I want to be with them, but I want them to understand how it is that we can be together, how we can be in this relationship. So he wanted to be clear and to be strong, right? And he wanted the burden to be heard. He wanted to be heard, right? Exactly, piercingly felt by them. So he wanted Isaiah to speak with authority. Right? He wanted not only for him to speak in authority and purpose, and there were two reasons. And number one, so that the people would know that they were hearing from God. They wanted to know that when Isaiah was speaking, that it was God speaking. And that they wanted to just don't look at Isaiah, but look at what Isaiah is saying, and that God was trying to get their attention. So that was number one. The people would know that they were hearing from God. And number two, that they would have no excuse to continue in the way that they were doing and the things that they were doing, not honoring God. God wanted to kind of halt that and stop it, and then come to a place of saying to them, hey, listen, this is what I want. This is how I want you guys to come into. This is how you should be doing it, right? So that I can do that. And then if you do that, these are the things that are going to happen. So we're going to look at that, the problem and the solution. So in Isaiah 58, 2 and 5, you really have the problem. He's really outlining the problem. And he said, man, this is the stuff that's really going on. right? It was a nation that they thought they knew him, but in reality, they didn't know him. They said that they knew him, but they didn't know him because they were doing something his name, but they weren't really doing anything that was honoring him. They weren't doing anything that was really anything that he would be exactly promoting, right? And so he was trying to get really their attention, right? And basically they were being idolatrous, and they were being blinded by their own self-righteousness and their pride. And they were doing what they wanted, and they were doing it in a fashion that it was displeasing to God, right? And they were being haughty about coming really in his presence instead of being humble. And even though it says that they even said, man, we humble ourselves. And you don't hear, like, who goes around, I'm humble. Right? I'm humble. And God, yeah, man, get out of here with that. Guys, it's not humble, man. Look what you're saying. You're humble, and then you want something from me. Look at the haughtiness of your heart. And so he's kind of bringing that out, right? And they were acting like they were perfect and they were without sin and that they were upright before God, but they didn't know God at all, right? And so they fasted and they did things that were not pleasing to God, and God just wanted them to hear the voice. They wanted to hear his voice and how he wanted to approach and break that so that they can understand. Listen, I know that I love you guys. You need to know that I love you guys, and I love, for you guys and us to have this relationship together. And but this is wrong, and this needs to be moved so that we can walk together and we can be together. And so God was trying to communicate to the people, right, that you look the part. Isn't that interesting? He said, you look the part by the things you do, but your heart is far from me. Amen. Think about that. Man, you look the part, but your heart is far from me. And God was trying to say, hey, you know what? Don't look the part, because I see the heart. I know your heart. And your heart is far from me. So forget about all these little things that you do to think that brings you favor. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in your heart. I'm interested in that relationship, right, that we can have that doesn't blind you. So anyway, that was the problem. And then we look at Isaiah 6 through 14, and then God begins to talk about the solution. And it's interesting, it is in this portion of Scripture that we're going to focus a little bit, not by hashing it out and everything that is being said, because again, it is a mouthful, and it would really literally take weeks to break that down in what he was talking about, and how this really reflects to the church, and especially the power of Jesus working in our lives in the way that he does. But what he was trying to do in the solution to them really was he was trying to describe to them the heart condition that they needed to have. And he was basically saying to them in a nutshell, man, if you really come to me and you're really coming into my presence, he says your heart will melt in my presence. Watch this. And it would be known that that's what's going on, because your heart would be drawn to one another. He says you wouldn't have all this stuff that's going on, man. You would be in my presence. There would be something that's taking place in your heart, right? And I would be there, and I would be present with you, and you would be there, and you would be in my presence. But not only would you be in my presence, but you would be sensitive, right, to the needs of those that are around you. Right? So he says, man, then you would clothe people, you would help people, you would see the afflicted, those that are in bondage, those that are in your yoke. That's powerful. Reed said something powerful, right? And I hope that we can just keep this thought, right, throughout the rest of this lesson that we have this morning. Reed said last week this: make it personal so it can be what? Powerful. Say that with me. Make it personal so it can be powerful. Make it personal so it can be powerful. In other words, we can all hear this, but we individually have to determine that what we're hearing we're going to respond to. So he said, make it personal so it can be powerful, right? And so I like that, that he's just not speaking to us and he's just not saying things. He's saying these things to us, right? So that he's leading us in a way so that we know, right, in the way that he wants us to be, in the way that's going to be pleasing unto him. So the whole idea of the fasting is not really what we're talking about, is the idea that in that, when he said, when you fast, the real fast has these elements in it. It's not just abstinence from food, but it has elements in it. And you know that you're doing a real fast, man, if you begin to do my work, if you begin to reach out to the poor, if you begin to clothe people, if you begin to take care of people, if you begin to take care of each other, he says, man, that's really what the real fast is really all about. When you are being with one another the way I desire to be with you. Allow me to come in, allow me to rule and reign, and then I want you to begin to submit and yield and begin to be me to one another. Wow. This is what he's really wanting from them, right? And so he knew, right, that in this solution, that it wasn't going to be a self-centered thing. It was going to be a God-centered thing. He wanted that not to be in a self-centered thing, but in a God-centered thing, right? And then he says, then your voice is going to be heard on high. Because their complaint was, man, we're saying, but it's like our voice is not being heard. And he's, no kidding. No kidding. What surprise is in that? But he says, man, you want your voice to be heard? This is how your voice is heard. Man, if you could just be loving one another, and if you could be meeting needs, and if you can help, and if you can look around you, and you can unburden, and you could take away yokes. If you make this personal, listen, it can be what? Powerful. If you make it personal, it can be what? Powerful. So we have to look at that and we have to make a decision about that, right? And so what he's saying is, what I desire most is a people who delight in the Lord. This is what he's telling them, to clothe, feed, undo heavy burdens. One of the things we all know is Mother Teresa, one of her favorite scriptures is in Matthew 25:40, and it says this, truly I tell you, whatever you did for the least of these, my brothers and sisters of mine, you did it for me. What we're going to focus on is the least of these, and we're going to focus on those particular verses that are there, the least of these. So let's think about what the least of these mean, right? So when we look at it, so what does the phrase least of these mean? It does not mean, listen, it does not mean that some humans are less valuable than others. It doesn't mean that. That's not what it's talking about. As if there was a hierarchy of worth in human, with some being higher than others, right? And so when you look at it, there was this humankind, that there was some people that were less than others. That's not what that's not the least that he's talking about, right? On the contrary, all human beings have, right, the inherent worth and value because they all have the same nature, namely a human nature. In other words, all humans are made in the image of God. Genesis 1:27 says that all of us are made in the image of God. So when he's talking about least, he's not talking about human. He's not talking about the comparison of human. But what he is talking about, the least of these, right? He's talking about those that maybe are socially, psychologically, economically disadvantaged. Those that are sick, those that are poor, mentally, physically disabled, right? Those are the category. That's when he talks about least, that's what he's talking about. And then he said, those of you, man, if you are like me and I'm in you and you're in me, then you will be the person that I can use to meet those needs of the least of these. This is what he's saying to us in Isaiah, and then he expresses it more here in Matthew 25:35 through 45, and I want to read that to you. Then the king will say to those on the right, come, you who are blessed of my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry, feed you, thirsty, give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes to clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison or go visit you? And the king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Then he will say to those on his left, depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared. For I was hungry, you gave me nothing. I was thirsty, you gave me nothing. And that's you gave me nothing. You gave me nothing. You did nothing. You did nothing. You gave nothing. There was nothing there. There was nothing. I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me. They also, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty, or a stranger, or needing clothes, or sick in prison, and did not help you? Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these, you did not do for me. What an interesting thing. What he's basically saying there, right, that in the least of these in our service ultimately is not really to the poor, but to Christ himself. In serving of others, you're serving Christ. That's why he says, I was hungry. When did that happen? And he's explaining it, and he's saying it very clear. Man, if you've not done it to them, man, you've not done it for me. And if you did it for them, I want you to know, man, what you've done it for me. Right? God has always shown special concern for the poor and for the needy. So it should come as no surprise, right, that he expects the followers, right, to do the same. I was in Florida, and this is something of the idea of making it personal and it becoming powerful. And I was in vacation with my children and my wife, and we were in a van. There were so many of us. We traveled in a 15-passenger van. And so we were going to McDonald's, and I was doing the pre-speech, before you take a tribe anywhere. And so I'm there, and I'm take them all out of the van, line them all up. Listen, guys, we're going to go in there. I've already got your orders, but we're going to go in. We're going to find, and I'm going through the whole, yeah, Dad, okay, Dad, don't tell me, yeah, Dad. Then go in there and, blah, 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 and we're getting all that straight and everything like that. And then we're marching in there, right? And I'm holding the door and bah, bah, bah. And so they picked this place by the window, right? And so I went, got all their food, and we're looking out the window, and we're eating. And as I'm looking out the window, there's this gentleman sitting outside, and he's sitting against a pole, and basically the sign just said, hungry. And we're eating, and we're watching this guy. And my kids look at Dad, and I'm like, what? I said, look. And I looked, I said, oh, man, you know what? I got up. And I finished my food. I went to the counter. I bought some food, right? And I went outside, and I just said, hey, listen, man, I'd like to give you some food. And the guy said, man, thank you. And so I opened the bag up, and I was putting the straw, in the soda, and I'm helping him out a little bit there, trying to, get that done. And we began to talk. And we're talking back and forth, find out that he was homeless, and was telling me the story, and that he really didn't have anywhere to go, but he would like, somewhere to go and, to get out of the situation that he was. So what I did is I got on the phone, and I just started calling different ministries in that area. And there was a homeless ministry, and I talked to them, but they were way on the other side of town. And so, I said, hey, listen, this is the story I told the guy. He said, oh, bring them over here. We'll help them. This is what we do. And, so you could bring them. And I said, man, are you guys open now? They said, yeah, we're about to do, evening feeding. And so, that's a time that he can enter, he can come. So I went in and I talked to him. I said, hey, listen, I know this place where you can go, right? I got the guy on the phone right now and he wants your information and you could talk with him. He goes, I can go now? I said, yeah. So I gave him the phone. He talked to the guy, and all that. While that was going on, right, there was this car that was like moving, right, in the parking lot. And as I was talking to the guy and we hung up and it was finalized, right, where it's going to go, and I had gotten the address and everything like that, this car pulls up and this guy has money in his hand. He just sticks it out. And then I look at him. I don't know what he's trying to do. So I went and I looked and he said like that, didn't say anything, just went like this. So I took the money and he went off. So I'm assuming, man, this money's for this guy. So the guy doesn't know what's going on. And he said, man, how I'm going to get there? I said, we're going to call a cab and this money's yours. You're going to pay for that cab and you're able to go there. And the guy said, what? So anyway, we ended up calling the cab, right? And they took care of it. I gave the guy the money and then off he goes in the cab. Now, to me, that story really highlights what Reed was talking about, that when you make it personal, it can be what? When you make it personal, it can be what? Yes. The least of these, right? That's what this is about. I want to leave that thought in your head. I want the worship team to come up. And as they do, right, I want to just leave this thought with you. Then what does all of this mean to us? What is it that all of this means to us? How does this affect me? Well, if we think of Isaiah 58, and we think about how God is saying, hey, don't do it this way, but do it this way. And this is what should be happening if you're seeking my face. And if you're seeking my heart, then you should have my heart. And then if you're seeking me, these are the things that should be taking place. And then we look at Matthew 25, and then Matthew 25 breaks it down, and then Jesus breaks it and makes it a little bit more personal. And he says, man, if you fed me, if you did this, if you did that, if you did this, man, you're doing it under me, man. And I want you to go and I want you to do it to your brothers and your sisters. I like the idea of brothers and the sisters because for me, it gives the idea, you know what, to the household of faith first. The church, man, taking care of the folks in the church and then going out and taking care of the folks in the community. That's a powerful thing. So, what does this all mean? The least of these. I'll leave you with this. We need to care. We need to get involved. All of us together. We might not, and in fact, we will not eradicate all the issues of all the things that ache so many. But I like the blessing that it says that there are those who are going to get fed and those who are going to get taken care of, and that bondages are going to be broken. Man, all the promises of all those wonderful things, if we make it personal, it can get powerful because it gives an opportunity for God to what? Show up. Because we're willing to give him what's in our hand to put it into someone's hands. So we should be involved. Do what we can, because what he's saying is to be more like Jesus in our actions. That's what it means to be the least of these. Amen? Let's make it personal so that it can be what? God bless you.
Thanks for listening. This message was a part of the ministry of Crossroads Community Church. To support Crossroads and make more messages like this available, you can click Give Now in the description below. And to find out more information on all of Crossroads Ministries, go to crossroads140.com. If you enjoyed the message today, don't forget to follow us or subscribe to our channel, and we hope to see you again soon.